Hi, everyone. Carmine here for another episode of the Launchpad. That's right. I'm back. You guys are listening. Well, I hope you're listening. We have been here for 8 seasons, coming up on 9 seasons. I think I started this podcast. I still had hair on my head. I really do. It's crazy how long we've been together. We've gone through a pandemic. We've gone through a lot of things together. And I'm glad some of you have stuck with me. Some of you said that guy Carmine's crazy. I'm not listening anymore because he talks too much. And I do. I talk a lot. But today I have promised that I'm not going to be talking as much. I'm bringing a guest on. This is an awesome guest. You know why? I love it because I was going through fiddling and listening to podcasts, and I found this podcast, and you guys are going to love it. I'm going to let him intro the podcast, but it's awesome. When he tells you about it, I would recommend everyone go out, download this podcast because it's awesome. Named Josef Shapiro. The great part about it is not just a podcaster. I mean, we're going to cover a lot of stuff on this call before we run out of time. Josef, you there, man?
I am here. Thanks
How's
for
it
having me,
going?
Carmine.
Oh man, love it. I am so happy to get you on here. I reached out to talk to you. I want everybody to know this guy's in Hawaii and he's actually jumping on his podcast. I don't even know what time it is over there. I could never keep up on those time frames, but I appreciate you coming on, Josef. This is great. I, as you heard, came on real quick. I want to get your background, but I want you to tell everybody a little bit about the podcast. I don't want to spend too much time on the podcast because you've covered a
Sure.
lot of stuff. You have a lot of episodes out there. But give a quick rundown of the podcast, then we'll kind of get into your
Well,
background.
yeah, thanks. I've got two podcasts actually. The first one is Manage to Engage, and I haven't been adding much to that, but that was my first podcast,
Okay.
Manage to Engage, and that's largely business focused, but toward the end, it starts to go into different things. The podcast I'm currently working on, I call the Human Maturity Podcast, which is very much what it is. It's a very no frills title. And that covers, recently I've been talking a lot about structural perception, which has a lot of applications in business, but it's not limited to business. It's a lot about human development, how people change, because, I started out as a management consultant and a business coach almost 25 years ago, and I didn't have any intention of getting into more personal development, spiritual development, psychological development. I really wasn't interested in that. I just wanted to do business stuff. But what I found was people weren't following instructions. In the role of management consultant, I found you can tell someone exactly what to do and how it works and what the best way of thinking about it is. And I was shocked to see how most people could not take it in. So then,
Really?
yeah. And when consultants get together and talk, this is one of the things we talk about. Same with therapists. With everybody, any helper of humans, therapists, social workers, coaches, consultants, one of the perennial conversations is like, I told this person to do this and it really would have helped, and then they wouldn't do it. What the hell? It's just a perennial conversation. So for me, I see challenges as puzzles that need solving. So I just got to work, was like, well, how could something be so simple and so clear what will solve a problem, but then the people don't do it? So that led me into psychology and spirituality and personality typing. And that's the search I've been on. It just became the passion for figuring out how people change, how to improve that.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, your background and your knowledge is so diverse. And what I found with the podcast was that I listened to a few of the shows and it was dragging me in to listen to more. Because sometimes I'm like, oh, that was good. And it seemed like what you were talking about is what I needed at the time I was listening. And I was like, this guy's like a magician. How's he doing that?
I get that sometimes. Well, I operate a lot with intuition, and when people say that, I say, I guess that particular episode was for you, and the maybe one or two other people who said the same. So I'm glad. I'm just, it took me a long time to realize how and why, but I'm just an iterative kind of learner. So I'm insatiably hungry to get to the bottom of reality, of what solves problems, of what helps people change. And I learn models until I find their weaknesses, and then I find another one, and then I find another one, or I create synthesis along the way. And so that's just what my life has turned out to be dedicated to. It wasn't on purpose. I really wanted to be just a martial artist and a management consultant, but life had other plans, I guess.
The good part is you knew life had other plans. You didn't. Doesn't seem like you fought it. You might have fought a little, but it seems like you followed what the plan was.
Eventually, yeah. I definitely, well, I have more of an orientation toward listening than fighting, but I was definitely worn down. Anyone who says they're really good at listening to life's lessons, hold on to your wallet.
Yeah.
It takes a while to learn how to listen. And, that's the same reason why people have such a hard time with change, because just because something is the right thing to do doesn't mean the person is willing to be reorganized around that right thing. And that's particularly important for entrepreneurs who tend to be very strong-willed. I must know the right way to do it. My idea is the best idea. And the paradox is the very thing that gets people into entrepreneurialism, business ownership, any kind of leadership, the thing that gets them into it is inevitably the same thing that holds them up, which is they're great at initiating and thinking they're the smartest person in the room, and they're bad at listening when they're wrong. And that's usually the place where people have to learn.
Yeah, it's and all of us, and I don't even like the word mistake. All of us have fallen into that.
Oh yeah.
Some of us have realized it. I know when I go into a room, I'm like, man, I want to get the best people. That's why I brought them in. I don't know everything, but it took me a
Mhm.
while. I was a fighter about that. You did. I crashed some businesses before I really learned that, and it really hits home when you say that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you'd find any successful, depending on how you define that. Most people have the story of quote unquote failures that are very often just profound lessons in humility. And if you are a powerful person, then typically you will need to be humbled at a certain point so that that gets governed and corrected. I've definitely been through a number of waves of that. I'm 52 now, and I think I'm ready to get started now this year. I think I've gotten enough kicks in the pants to be like, okay, I think I figured it out now. And that can take 40 or 50 years. If you're paying close attention and working really hard at it, it still takes that long.
Man, it's hard, right? And I
Very
run
hard.
into entrepreneurs. Some people think, and you probably run this all the time, that if you're somewhat successful, they just think they want to start off where you are. Like you meet people and you're talking to them and they're like, okay, so I want to start a business. And all of a sudden they want to be where you are. I'm like, dude, I've been doing this for 50 years. You can't just
hmm
start here, right? You've probably run into that.
Yeah, and that really leads to one of the distinctions I want to make sure we talk about today related to that entrepreneur thing. If we use where I started out was at eMyth. That's where I got my
Yeah.
initial business coaching training almost 25 years
That's
ago now.
amazing in its own. I think that what a great background you have.
I was so blessed. I mean, I was an out of work recruiter right after the dot bomb in 2000. I'd been a recruiter in Silicon Valley, and I had some friends who were actually martial arts teachers of mine who were using Aikido as a model for management consulting, and I got to go on their gigs occasionally and get thrown around. I was
Wow.
27, 28. And I was like, I had very little work experience, was quite immature, and I was like, I want to be a management consultant. Just like you said, I want to be where you are, right? And I had no idea how to get there. And I just managed to run into someone who worked at eMyth and they happened to be hiring and I got a job there. And, their format is they teach you everything you need to know. So I was like a duck on water and a sponge and any other metaphor you want to bring up. And so I learned fast and I just was in heaven. And the one of the things I learned, after a couple of years, I started to see some patterns. Like, E-Myth Revisited remains to be the number five best-selling business book of all time.
Yeah.
It still sells a ton. I think it's up to 13, 14 million copies now. And even though there is a lot of conversation in the E-Myth model and in the E-Myth books about management, somehow people walk away with the three personalities. There's the entrepreneur, the manager, and the technician. And the entrepreneurial myth is the myth that people who start businesses are entrepreneurs, the teaching goes, when in fact they're actually technicians who have entrepreneurial seizures and say, why am I cutting hair when I could be a salon owner? Why am I running wire when I could be a contractor? And then they get into it and then they realize that the skills they have as a technician do not apply to running the business.
Wow.
That's the E-Myth. And it, swept the nation in the 90s. It was a big deal. But what people miss is they go from technician to entrepreneur, and the entrepreneurial personality is innovative and sexy and fun and high energy and creative. And people skip right over the management part.
Really?
And the manager, one of the models for that is the entrepreneur defines, the manager designs, and the
Wow.
technician does.
Okay.
Right? So people want to be the entrepreneur, define this is the product, this is the idea, and then walk out of their office and say, this is what we're doing, and then everybody goes and does it. Right? That's the entrepreneurial fantasy is all I got to do is have the idea, the vision, the inspiration, and then someone else, some team, they'll make it happen. Well, somewhere in there, someone has to do the very dry, methodical management work. It's thankless.
Yes.
And here's the important thing. If you cannot manage yourself, then you can't manage other people. And most entrepreneurs are not interested in any kind of boundaries whatsoever. And that's self-management. Self-management is planning your day, organizing your tasks, saying no to opportunities, all sorts of things that don't necessarily feel good, holding people accountable, which is not comfortable for anyone on either
Yeah.
side. And they don't want to do that. And they say, then they identify with the role of entrepreneur. Well, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not going to project manage. I don't want to get into, I don't want to be people's therapist. I don't want, well, that's management, right? So someone's going to have to do it. And if you're not going to do it,
Mhm.
either it won't get done and bad things are going to happen, or you'll hire a manager to do it. And they're going to be wondering why they're not getting paid a lot more eventually.
Yes. Yes. Because they're running your business for you.
Right. And that actually is in the E-Myth Revisited. There's a Harry, Sarah, who's the star of the show, the owner of the pie shop, hires a guy named Harry as I think a bookkeeper. And then she keeps giving Harry more and more duties. And then one day Harry's like, I'm overwhelmed and underpaid. I'm out of here.
Yep.
And I've seen this happen so many times where I've worked with, probably almost 1,000 business owners. And so many times, if the business has the money, the owner will say, well, I don't want to learn how to manage. Once I start teaching them how to manage, and they're like, this is really hard. They don't really say this, but this is what they mean. This is really hard. How about I just hire a CEO and I'm on the board? I'm like, okay, well, who's going to manage the CEO? And they go, well, they're a CEO. They won't need management. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Screw around and find out
Yes.
because they're going to wonder what if you're not managing, if you're not helping them grow, if they don't feel that they're developing under you, then why shouldn't they become your competitor? At
Yeah.
best, they're going to resent you and be overworked. At worst, they're going to leave and beat you as a competitor.
It's going to happen at some
Hmm.
point. It's going to happen.
So a business owner needs to be equal parts entrepreneur and manager. And if they're a decent technician, like fine, then they'll have to stop doing that at some point. But for most people who start businesses, the entrepreneurial mindset is actually not that difficult. It's the managerial part, the designing, the project managing, the classic example, thinking that people are motivated by money. Most people are not thinking that just because you're paying them, they'll do whatever you say because they work, quote, for you. No, that isn't true. You actually have to get to know them and understand what their motivations are if you want them to work well for you. You have to engage what is their motivation to be working for you in the first place. Why should they do that? But the entrepreneur who eschews the domain of management, they just want to assume, oh, and here's another part of the E-Myth that's so important. This idea that like, well, if I just develop the systems and write down as system action plans all the things that need doing, well, then the people will run the systems and then I won't have to manage the people. The systems will somehow manage the people. No, they won't.
No.
They won't do it.
No.
And that's what people project onto models like EOS or like eMyth. I mean, eMyth's not the only system game in town, but there's this idea of like if you just have the systems written down, then everything will just take care of itself and then you won't have to manage people. And that's the hook, because businesses like that know that the entrepreneurial mindset doesn't want to have to manage people. So they package a product that makes it look like they won't have to do that.
Hmm. Yeah. No,
It
100%.
can
I
help a
mean,
little, but not a lot.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the things that you're explaining, and you've run into too. If you've been in this and in business for a number of years, you run into all of these things. It's just being able to identify them and work them and
Yeah.
know it. And I always feel like people are fearful of doing something wrong or telling somebody it didn't work. When I do something wrong or something I try doesn't work, they ask me, hey, what about that? I go, yeah, it didn't work. I mean, what's wrong with saying that,
Yeah. Well, I mean, this and many other things are on the list of things you have to learn as a leader, the ability to make mistakes without collapsing your authority, for example.
Yeah.
That's not easy to do, and it takes practice. And it leads to another thing on this list, which is this at a very high contextual level. People, consciously or not, when they go into business for themselves, one of the reasons they're doing it, again, consciously or not, is they don't want responsibility. They want success without responsibility. And they see the responsibility it takes to work, quote, for someone else.
Yes.
And they go, I don't like those boundaries. I don't like that accountability. I'm going to work for myself. I'm going to start this enterprise and I'll have people working for me. Well, what they find out, I know you know what I'm going to say.
No doubt.
It turns out managing people is more responsibility than being managed. And that's part of why where they're in this tension of like, but I don't want to I don't want to have to be the boss. I don't want to have to compose myself in a certain way and talk to people in a certain way. I don't want to have to be the boss. That's rigid, that's tight. That's not why I got into this in the first place. And I want to say, I'm sure it isn't. I understand, but surprise, being a boss is more responsibility than being an employee. You cannot escape responsibility. And now,
Yes.
one ring out from that, when we get really philosophical and existential here, why do they want to not have any of those responsibilities of being an employee or a boss? Because almost all entrepreneurs have a misguided and distorted notion of what freedom is.
Mm.
If you ask, never mind ask entrepreneurs, but ask 1,000 people, what is freedom? This is one of my pet coaching questions. I'll ask people, what do you think freedom is when this is sort of in the space? And they almost always reflexively they'll say, getting to do whatever I want, whenever I want. And then
100%.
I say, do you know anyone who can do that? And no. You could be the richest person in the world. There are still laws. They still need sleep. You still have to eat properly. And you got to manage all that money, which is a whole lot of work, right? So that's what it ultimately comes down to, is that freedom is always inside of boundaries. It's not outside of boundaries.
Yeah.
And
Man,
once someone gets that, things can start to change.
you see, guys, you're listening to this podcast. This is why I kept listening to the podcast. This is amazing stuff because it really, and what scares me sometimes, makes you really look at yourself instead of at other people and make yourself better.
Well, that's basically, like, I do a lot of different things. I do emotional work, spiritual work. I do business work, but it's like, in preparation for this podcast, I was trying to think of, because these days I don't know how to introduce myself. I help people solve problems from the inside out.
That's good.
Business problems, relationship problems. It's just the common theme among all of it is, if you're interested in starting with what it is you need to learn to solve the problem, because the problem you're dealing with, that's what it's for primarily. I don't see that life is caring about our success. It cares about our growth, right? So from like life's perspective, whatever that is, it's like if a business failure is going to teach you more than a business success, then that's what's going to happen, because that's what life is putting money on. It wants you to learn. And so if you can learn the lesson, like you start a new venture and your idea of freedom is getting to do whatever you want, you'll start to encounter friction when you deal with the boundaries of customer relationships, employee relationships, vendor relationships, whatever. When you start to feel those boundaries and you go, I don't like this, this doesn't feel free to me. Now you found the lesson to be learning.
Yeah.
Okay, now you got to change your relationship to freedom. or fail. It's up to you.
Yeah.
And that might take a month or 10 years
Or a couple businesses.
or several
I mean, it
businesses.
happens. I mean, it does.
Yeah.
People, and you more than anyone knows this. People sometimes take a lot of beatings before they learn.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I had a client once who I was working with the owner. He owned three businesses at the same time, really classic entrepreneur. And this I was working with this one of his CEOs. And the CEO told me the owner is taking too much money out of the business. He's treating this like an ATM. Like I've never heard that before. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And the owner was like, the money is there. I don't know why they're telling me the money isn't there. And I went back and forth for like a month or so with each of them. And I was like, I said to each of them the same thing. I was like, you guys need to get into a room and talk until you agree how much money is in the business. Do not leave the room until you're on the same. There's can only be one reality here about how much money can be
It's
taken
a
out of the
number.
business. It's a number. Right. But the owner was more interested in chartering planes
Yes.
and going to Fiji. And like, that's what he wanted. That's what freedom was for him. And the CEO was not like that. So the owner literally was dissociating from reality. And guess what? A year later, the SEC investigated that business and it closed. And
Yes.
he went on to do other things.
Yeah. It's
One of the other
amazing.
businesses failed as well. And that was
Wow.
a direct relationship. That was life holding him accountable for a distorted relationship to freedom.
Wow. So, see, amazing stuff. Real quick, I want to go back to when you first came on. You said something about structural perception.
Oh, yeah.
What the heck is that?
Yeah. You know, where do I start with structural
Oh,
perception?
God.
So critical thinking is already at a deficit for most people, which is unfortunate because we're not taught really good critical thinking. The only place you really formally can learn critical thinking is in law school, and even that is not usually sufficient for the kind of critical thinking that people need, logical fallacies and that kind of stuff. But structural perception is applied pattern recognition. Of like the metaphor I use for this is usually like if your shoes become untied 15 times a day, you have a system for that. And this is the best way to think about it because especially entrepreneurs, when they think in terms of systems, most people think of systems as intentional, designed, documented. Here's how you do it. A system for making coffee, a system for producing this product, a system for segmenting this market. Right? Those are systems too. But the more important systems, if you define system as not necessarily intentional, and the way I define system is very generic on purpose. A system is a collection of interrelated elements that produce a result, a consistent result. A collection of interrelated elements that produce a consistent result. That result doesn't necessarily need to be positive or intentional. That's a system. So where people go wrong is they have an undesirable result in their business, in their relationship, anywhere. And then they think, okay, let's figure this out. Let's get this organized. Here's the intention. Here's what we're going to do. Here's the system. But what they don't understand is their intentional system, they just put on top of the invisible system.
Yes.
They didn't uninstall the
I can
existing
picture
system.
what you're talking about.
And this is the equivalent of putting whipped cream on excrement. It's like, okay, the excrement already exists and you're going to intentionalize it. Like, what's the underlying set of circumstances that's producing that? If the new system doesn't address the invisible system, then you have a problem. It's like with the shoes. The shoes keep coming untied 15 times a day. Well, I'm going to get new laces. That's my new system. Okay, well, why were they becoming untied in the first place? Well, I then parentheses, well, I don't want to look at that. I don't know how to tie my shoes. That would be embarrassing. I'm going to get new shoes. I'll get a new pair of shoes every month. That will solve the problem. And it's a ridiculous example, but that's what people do. Like hiring, for example. Really, most entrepreneurs don't like hiring because it's a management function, right? You got to listen carefully and you got to be organized and you got to talk to a lot of people. And to hire well, it's really an art and a science. And entrepreneurs would rather go with like their gut feeling. This person's perfect. I like talking to them. They're fun to talk to. All bad criteria. Entrepreneurs typically talk way too much in the interview. They're selling the job. Don't ever sell a job in the interview. Make them sell themselves, right? And so many entrepreneurs will keep hiring the same kind of person who doesn't work out, but they won't look at their hiring system. What's your hiring system? Well, I look to see if we vibe.
Okay.
I look to see if they're fun to talk to. Like if there's energy in the room, then I know they're the right person. Okay, keep doing that.
Yeah.
That's your system, right?
I'm sorry to laugh, but 100%, right? You probably go into these businesses like, oh my God.
I mean, really, I do a lot of different things, but one of the primary things I do when I work with someone, either personally, if they're looking, with personal goals and whatnot, or a business person, what I'm looking for is what are the invisible systems they're not aware of?
Yeah.
Because they're usually not that hard to find. I mean, I can find them in minutes now. When I first started, it took me months, because I didn't know I was looking for them. But once you know what to look for, really the long period of time is waiting for the right moment to show them, because the person has to be ready to be able to look at it. And
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
about here's a system. I mean, I'm sure anybody listening to this either is someone or knows someone who has done 3 long-term relationships with the same person who has different names, right? There's a structure. They're either like your mother or your father or a little bit of both, or they're the complete opposite of your mother or father or both, right? Because that's still related to mom and dad.
Yeah.
And you have a system, an idea. This is the kind of person I need. And I'm drawn to that. It's like, oh man. And then 18 months later, it turns out they're constantly critical of you and you can never do anything right. And then that relationship ends. And then you find someone else and it looks way better. Oh, this person's totally different. And then 18 months later, it turns out they're the same person again. You have a system for that. You have a system. There are no consistent results without systems.
Wow.
So just because the system is unconscious doesn't mean it's a system. And then that's the real work. How does it happen? What is the structure that is
Yeah.
producing this consistent result?
Yeah. Do you find and we talk about this. This is so interesting. Do you find that entrepreneurs or just people in general are looking to fix the problem instead of going after the structure of the problem? I guess if
Yeah.
I'm saying that right or
Yeah,
not.
yeah, exactly. Here's another useful metaphor I've been using. So a house. Imagine you're in a house where you've never been able to leave, right? Outside the house is philosophically what we call essence. You can't know what is outside the house other than what you can directly observe. Inside the house is, we could call it content, we could call it phenomenology, expression. Most people want to work at the level of content and expression, what they can see. Here's my couch, here's this glass, here's my television. It's very easy to see. But in between the essence that is outside the house, where the water comes from, the nature of electricity, how far the ocean is when you can't see it. That's all essential stuff. You can't really know that. You can make stuff up about it, and people do, but you can't know. But the layer in between is accessible. That's the layer of structure. In houses, we call it infrastructure. It's the
Ah.
plumbing, it's the wires, it's the insulation, it's the HVAC ducting. You can access that, and it has a direct experience, a direct effect on your day-to-day experience. So, like, someone's in a living room, and there's one corner of the living room that's always cold. So, how do they solve it? Well, they just have 3 blankets on that couch over there. And then they build an identity around like, well, I just run cold over here. This is just how it is. Instead of looking in the attic and seeing like, oh, the duct is actually broken. That heating register is getting no heat, right? But there's a price to pay for that. You got to open up the wall, or you got to crawl around in fiberglass, or you got to hire someone to go look at it. As soon as you go inside the walls, it's more work. It's uncomfortable. It might be expensive. So what people want to do is they want to solve the problem at the level of expression or content, not at the level of context or structure. They don't want to go inside the walls because you never know what you're going to find.
Excellent example. It's so true. It's like, oh, just get another blanket. I mean, again,
Yep.
whatever the answer is, the
Yeah, this
quick fix.
outlet doesn't work. I'll just use an extension cord and run
Yeah,
it from another. Do you realize that that outlet being broken could cause a fire one day? You
yeah,
don't know what it's going to do, right?
yeah. Excellent.
And so they just ignore it. Well, it turns out there's a loose neutral, and then one day there's a fire. Well, and then they're play victim to the fire. Well, you had the symptoms. You just worked around getting to the root problem,
Wow,
and now
it's
you endure
amazing.
the consequences and wonder why.
Love it. Do you run into it? Again, we could talk about this forever. Do you run into, you know, business in some business, in most cases, generalized businesses across the board, depending on what business you have. There are specific things you have to do. Do you run into structural problems that kind of are the same across the board,
Oh yeah,
or
there there are so few. The number one goes directly to the missing manager thing I was talking about,
yeah,
and that is accountability. The number one underlying condition in small to medium sized businesses is lack of accountability. And how this shows up is someone will say, like, my employees are making too many mistakes. Okay, give me an example. Person did this, and then that happened, and then they screwed up. Okay, and then what did you do? I got really frustrated. Uh-huh. And then what happened?
yeah,
That's it. Well, did you talk to the employee? Yeah, I told him how frustrated I was. Oh boy. Okay. And then you go, well, what is your system for holding people accountable in your business? And they go, what are you talking about? A system for accountability? What does that look like?
wow,
Right?
wow,
Even the people who do have PIPs, improvement plans, usually those are designed around the legal and labor law needs of the business. And they're about establishing a paper trail and checking boxes off from their HR consultant. They're not actually about helping the employee change. So I've been coaching businesses for 25 years. I've never encountered someone who said, yeah, here's our accountability system and here's how we help people change. No, it doesn't do that.
no.
Oh, here's a great story. This is one of my favorites. This was a social services organization with several hundred employees. And I had asked that very question. Okay, the person screws up. What do you do then? And he said, well, then they get retrained. I was like, what do you mean? Well, whatever, we have systems for a lot of things. We get government contracts. We have to have systems for all sorts of stuff. So whatever they messed up on, we have a system for. So someone then retrains them on the system. And I said, uh-huh, but that is based on the assumption that the reason they screwed up was because they didn't know the system. How do you know that's why they screwed up? And then he got really quiet, right?
Show
So
me the training records.
yeah, it's like notice the assumption there. It's like the system is they screw up. So it's like here's how you make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And then they smear it on the wall because they're having a bad day. Let's go over how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich again. Like that's not the issue at all, right? So there was no engagement, no curiosity. It was just this very dry, bureaucratic non-engaged, let's go over the system again, which is actually insulting. You know, if you can imagine, if the employee knows how to do it and has the document, and then something goes wrong, and nobody's like, hey, man, what happened that day? What was
Yeah.
going on for you?
How can we help you? Yeah.
Right. But no one's doing that. It's like,
Oh my God.
okay, here's the retraining.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I mean, it's
100.
like a juvenile detention kind of thing. It
Oh
treats
my
people
God.
like children, and then they wonder why the employees act like children because the management is treating them like that.
Yeah. And I don't want to say this in negative. Most people are kind of childish, right? I mean, the way they act sometimes is so childish.
Well, let's put it diplomatically. We all need to mature.
Yes, that's I do.
And sure, me too. Everyone gets triggered. Everyone has maturation opportunities. When that happens in a business environment, it can result in a content level business mistake,
Mm.
which is an opportunity to have a conversation about where the momentary immaturity in the employee created a bad outcome. So you have to address both. Did you know what to do? Yes. Okay, then what happened? Oh man, I had a fight with my wife that morning and I really shouldn't have even come in that day, probably. Oh, okay. So why did you come in anyway? Well, because if I'm not a contributing member of the team, then who am I? Oh. But what if being a contributing member of the team means not showing up when you can't do your job competently? Oh, I never thought of it that way. Okay, now we're maturing.
Yes. Yes. 100%.
But then the natural entrepreneur is like, I don't want to have to get into conversations like that with my employees. That's like being a therapist. No, that's like being a manager and it's your job.
And
Sorry.
caring for people.
And
Yeah.
and that leads me to a great general definition I use for management. A manager cares about the experience of their employee. If you just start with caring about their experience and then bringing curiosity after that, then you will automatically start managing.
Yeah.
But if you don't want to have to deal with the experience of your employee and you want to just come up with ideas and walk out of your office and you have your employees go, "Oh, what a brilliant idea. I can't wait to make that happen for you." Well, then you're going to run into problems. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. Real quick and see if you've run into this. Up in New York, I owned a fairly large, and I thought it was large business. But I had about 40, 45 employees. And we would send surveys out and do things. And I wasn't the greatest manager. I admit it. I mean, I was young and I thought I knew everything, which I still don't know everything. Uh, and we sent out a survey, and we were having some employee issues with that many people. And I wasn't the greatest, leader. I'm still not a great leader of people, but we sent the survey out with different questions. And the number one thing our employees said they wanted, even if we had raises or more money, they wanted to feel appreciated.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
wow, that's amazing to me.
Well, I'll tell you, this is a little esoteric, but it's fun. People don't work for money. And here's my proof of that. The reason people don't work for money is because money is a symbol. It's not a thing. Money is a symbol of value that allows you to get other things. And that depends on the person. So, what is money? For some people, money is power. For another person, it's image, prestige, comfort, security, fun. That's what they're working for.
Hmm.
So money can be appreciation also. But if you can give someone, as I'm sure you've experienced, you can give someone a lot of money, but that doesn't necessarily lead them to feel appreciated.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
And that's the thing. Like usually there's salespeople who work for money. Salespeople, they're motivated by money because they've done whatever math and they've figured out that money is going to get them what they want. They're motivated by money. But 90% of people are not motivated by money.
Yeah.
Not as much as they maybe
Yeah.
should be in one's eyes, but you have to find out as a manager what actually motivates this person and how do I deliver that value to your employees because your employees are your target market too. And that's maybe will help entrepreneurs see it that way. You have the people who buy your products, that's a target market. And then you have the people who are your employees or contractors. They're your market too, and their needs matter.
Yeah.
And and
100%.
and management is really a form of marketing.
Oh, yeah. No,
It
no
includes it.
doubt. Yeah. I would agree with that 100%. We, I know we were going to say this, but we only got a few minutes left. I want to
Oh
talk.
no.
No, that's okay because I know we're
Let me
going to get.
insert one more thing there. Let me tag on one thing because you were talking about not being a great leader of people. That's the best orientation. Any manager or leader should never consider themselves a good leader or manager. There's
Oh,
nothing useful about thinking of yourself that way because you can
okay.
always get better at it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. I mean, I learn, I do things, I ask people, but because
Yeah,
you want people to be happy. You want to do good. I mean, we don't want to walk around with bells and stuff, but you want
yeah.
people to
But
want to be happy.
that's the orientation. The like the humble. It's sometimes called servant leadership, which has some problems with the phrase. But
Yeah.
real leadership means that you're dissatisfied with how good a leader you are today, and you want to be better tomorrow.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
I don't know if anybody ever is just done, and
Yeah.
that's a confusion between the technician mindset and the manager mindset. Because technician work, whether it's like accounting or brain surgery or whatever, like there is such a thing as perfection there. In leadership, there is not. You can
Yeah.
always get better and you will always make mistakes. And so people who have technical skills often have a difficult time going into the management realm because they see this realm where it can't be figured out. And I say to them, that's right. You can't perfect this. You can get better,
No, no
and that's a
perfect.
completely different mindset.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's no perfection in it because it's a constant moving target.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
And like that will cause people, that alone will cause people to avoid it because they unconsciously see, oh, this is not something I can master. Well, I'll just skip it altogether. Well, that's a bigger mistake.
yeah, man, it's so funny. They're exactly right because even in my career, some of the things you're mentioning, I see myself doing it. Years ago or whenever, and I'm like, wow. You didn't know. You don't. You did. You
Hmm.
just didn't know. I didn't even know there. Again, when you're younger or whatever, you don't even know there's people out there like yourself that could really have helped. If I had bolted on somebody like yourself years ago, it would have been so great.
Maybe. Who knows?
Oh no, would have
And
been
like
good.
when I run into someone who is, because it's a personality type, when people only want to do things that they're really good at or can be really good at, I'll sometimes give those clients assignments to do something, to pick up a hobby that they're just bad at and never going to be any good at.
Go do it. Let's go do it.
Like bowling is one of the things. Like, do you like bowling? And they'll be like, no, I'm terrible at it. Okay, I want you to bowl every Friday night for the next 3 months because that's what it's like to be your employees, right? They're struggling, they're learning. Because if you're not in a place where you're learning and pushing yourself against what is difficult for you, then it's very easy to forget what it's like, you know?
Yeah, yeah. No, I 100%. Um, and again, again, we could pick one of these topics and talk about it for an hour. I'd love to have you come back on the show because I know we're going to get a bunch of people coming on. Now, within your show, you also talk about, which I love, whether it's astrological, metaphysical, whatever. You do a lot of, is that astrological stuff you talk about?
Oh man, you're gonna bring up astrology. Okay, well,
Well,
if you're,
just real quick because I think it's so
it's okay.
interesting.
Well, let me back up here for a second. So it turned out that Carl Jung, one of the most influential teachers and leaders of psychology, was really into astrology. And I discovered this by accident. So let me back up another place here. One of my, I don't know, proclivities is I think in terms of models. E-Myth, the Enneagram, Landmark Education was a model I was into for a while. Um, Myers-Briggs. And I never was attracted to astrology because it just seemed so vague. But someone referred me to a Vedic astrologer about 8 or 10 years ago, and it made me really curious about how the model worked because sometimes it was dead on, and other times it was really vague and not useful.
Yeah.
So eventually I started asking the question, well, how could it be both? And so that became a puzzle for me. This is just what happens when I see a model that is somewhat effective. It makes me want to figure it out. So I started figuring it out. I started asking questions, and what it led me to do is start to redefine the terms. What I found was, let's go back to the house metaphor. What I found was astrology had been reduced to content description, personality typing type stuff, which is interesting, but not particularly useful. But what I found out by accident is that if you redefine the terms, there are houses, there are planets, and there are signs. 12 houses, 12 signs, and 9 planets in Vedic astrology, which is the model I use. If you redefine those terms, then they actually create a map of someone's psyche. And that's what Carl Jung was working with. He abandoned astrology because he was trying to get psychology to be accepted by Western medicine, and astrology was not a good look for that.
No, no
He
way.
dropped he dropped the kind of marginal stuff that was a hard sell, and so I accidentally picked up astrology and started sort of, I mean, it was like finding a buried city. So this is not newspaper astrology. It's incredibly sophisticated. And so I redesigned the system, and I'm actually about 80% of the way through a book on it. But I'm still extremely self-conscious about it because, most people, astrology is the most stigmatized model in the
Yeah,
world,
of
perhaps. It's
course.
it's not it's not what you saw in the newspaper as a kid. It's a brilliantly accurate predictive model for what life lessons you're going to avoid, and very often specifically how. And so I've started to experiment with that with my clientele. And about 8 or 9 times out of 10, it validates what I already saw and the course I wanted to take the person on. But 1 or 2 times out of 10, it says I was completely wrong.
Hmm.
And so then I adjust. And like, for example, I find that, I thought this person needs to be working on a particular issue in an emotional way. And then the astrology says, nope, the emotional way is not going to work. You got to come at it structurally. And I'm like, oh, well, that would explain why this has sort of become a grind. Let's change
Ah,
tracks. And then there's traction.
yeah.
So it's a third party mediation in a way because you can't trust the client. Nobody knows what they really want,
No
right?
way.
See Malcolm Gladwell and what's the Moskovitz spaghetti sauce talk and Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, who famously said, they'll buy this because I tell them to. You're not spending $12 million on product research, right? Real entrepreneurs and marketers get that people don't know what they want. But then the other side is, does the therapist, coach, consultant, do they know what is called for? Well, they might, but the astrology can operate as an objective view in the middle that might surprise both people.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been experimenting with, and it works really well.
Yeah. Not only do I, and do I think it's interesting, but I like how you use it as a tool. It's just a
Yeah.
tool you use. Hey, listen, just like you would ask somebody, hey, can you watch this for me or whatever? You're using it as a tool. But I think it's fun too. So it kind of has all of those elements to me in it. You're interested. I like how you're like, okay, we have this secret person. And I'm like in the car trying to guess who it is.
Good. You're playing along. Yeah. So on
Yeah.
the Human Maturity podcast, I do a teaching subject of some kind, and then I use a mystery celebrity chart at the end to demonstrate that the structural read can play out a lot of different ways. And that's something different the way I'm doing astrology. I call it developmental astrology. That's operating at the inside the walls level. So it's like, your house is already built. It's got the wires and the plumbing and the ducting wherever it is. And then you move into the house and then you can put things wherever you want, but you're not adjusting where the wires are or the plumbing is. That's already done.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets really interesting. And you can make structural changes if you go looking for the structural issues. You got to open up the walls.
Yeah, it's amazing. It really is great. I love it. Like I said, that's why I was so excited that you were going to come on, and I hope our listeners are getting this and they really jump in and realize, this is real life stuff. You're not making this up. Experience, knowledge. I mean, the stuff that you're talking about. I know that if entrepreneurs or business people are listening, they're experiencing this, whether they want to admit it or not, but they are.
One of the things you see, for example, in entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs, his chart is pretty similar to a lot of cult leader charts.
Wow.
There's a few ingredients those charts have. They are extremely independent, a self-referencing mind that doesn't necessarily take in other people's feedback. I recently did John Nash, the beautiful mind guy, the
Yeah.
brilliant math. He won a Nobel Prize. He had this loop in his chart that basically was like, it's my mind and it doesn't connect to anything outside me, right? So that made him a Nobel Prize winning mathematician. It also made him a schizophrenic. It's the same mechanism, right?
Wow.
And Steve Jobs had something similar, not quite so severe. But the same dynamic can also produce a cult leader who has delusions of grandeur and demands that everybody does exactly what they say. So the structures are eerily similar.
I
The
believe
question
it.
is, what are people doing with it? What's the conditioning that secondarily affects it, et cetera?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the other components that life gives them with that structure, with that, like you said, the wiring, stuff. They're given this. It's what else is it contributing?
Yeah, and Steve Jobs is a great example because, he's regarded as a genius. I would call him a genius chief brand officer. As a CEO, oh no, he had a lot to learn.
100%.
And he
1000%.
and he wasn't a good manager. Did he get amazing results? Yeah, and some people to this day hate his guts. So, was there a way that he could have become a better manager in addition to being the product genius that he was?
Correct.
I don't know, but that would have been the area of development for him.
Yeah.
And he almost failed, where he was fired famously from his own company because of that.
100%.
So,
Yeah.
so
It was all timing too. There, I mean, nobody even knew there was Apple or Mac out there for many years. Yeah, there was a small amount of people buying it until the 90s, mid 90s, late 90s, and then it picked up. Yeah, so it
yeah.
was a Apple and Mac. People don't realize they've been around a long time.
Yeah, I mean, Steve Jobs could have died like Nikola Tesla, penniless and
That's right.
alone, brilliant, but hated by everyone. He was right on that line.
Yes, he was. If they didn't take off, he was on that line. There's no
Yeah, right.
doubt.
Who knows? Well, I don't know enough about his story to know why it worked, but
Yeah.
he was on the edge of, being that a misanthrope, and
Yeah.
see Walt Disney and Ray Kroc and all the other people who
Yeah.
endured many failures along the way. So this is a model. What I want to help people do is help them get way ahead on what their shadow issues are, so they don't need three failed businesses before they get curious about what's inside the walls.
Yeah, yeah, that's very, very true. And some people don't get that second or third chance. So if they
That's
can get
right.
this and really make what they're doing work, I mean, it can
Or
really be
three
like
or four marriages, right? It's like
true.
whatever it is, like
It
how many
is. It's
failures
insane.
do you need? And if you could not fail in advance, it's not need the feedback from life to hold you accountable, what would be possible then? That's what I'm
No
always
doubt.
working toward.
Yeah, no doubt. Real quick, one question. I had pushed this out of my social that you were going to be on, and I got an email from, sorry, a post from somebody who asked me, and you might better answer this because we don't know their birth sign or anything like that, but when the best day in September was to open their business. And and I was just like, that might not be able to answer it because there might not be any way to do that.
Well, it leads to a really interesting point for why astrology has gained such a bad reputation. Because you can look at what are called the mundane transits, the
Oh,
where the planets are for all of us, and get some information from that. And so I could answer that question in a generic way. And that's the kind of thing you see in astrologer newsletters. They'll say, here's what's happening next month, and here's how it might affect you. But, and it may or may not be accurate. And to me, that causes people to lower their confidence in the
yes,
system. Because to really see that, you have to look at the person's individual chart. So an astrologer has a decision to make. If I want to put out a newsletter or a newspaper person, whatever,
yeah,
if I want to publish something that might be useful, I can't know the individual charts. So I have to be vaguer and less accurate. And then what's the structural effect of that? It's true for some people. It's not true for other people. The structural effect is people generally think of astrology as not very accurate. That doesn't mean it is. You see?
that's
So
right.
that's a structural effect, and that's one of the reasons why astrology has such a bad reputation, and that's why I won't ever do that.
Yeah,
I would
like
never say next month sun goes into whatever it's going to be Libra or whatever. Therefore, blah blah blah. No, no, no. How does it affect your particular chart?
yes,
What's it going to do to you? Because
yes.
you can broadly speak about it, but the most consistent result is you're going to think astrology can't be that accurate.
Yeah, it brings down the quality of what you're doing,
Totally.
and that's
And
kind of what
here's
I said.
and speaking of events, one of the things I've been doing a lot of recently is testing some theories I have about mundane transits. And if you look at the minute of the JFK assassination, or the moment of the explosion in the Apollo 13 mission, or the night Michael Jackson died, I just looked at in the middle of the night last night, the suicide of Sylvia Plath, every single one of these has a very compelling, strong indicator where things have just lined up in a way that doesn't necessarily mean something bad is going to happen, but at the very least, it probably means the person's not going to have a very good day.
Yeah, wow.
At worst, it could be way worse. And so the event charts can be very powerful that way, but you have to look at the individual.
Yeah, and it's inarguable. You're showing, no, this is it.
Yeah, I'm
You
going to be
know?
showing more events like that.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just,
awesome.
and like I said, those event charts, it doesn't necessarily mean that those alignments make bad things happen. But if you invert it, I never see bad things happen without those tight conjunctions and other things going on.
Yeah.
It says you never look at one of these death events or assassination events or whatever, and go, oh, I don't see anything here. It's never that. There's always
Ah,
some weird alignment of things that's like,
wow.
ooh, that doesn't look. Now that's bizarre, and it raises real questions about free will.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, especially with these events that you're seeing. Like, wait a minute, how's this lining
And
up?
where, yeah, and what one of the things that got me into astrology is when I was talking to the astrologer I used to see years ago, and he said it was the first predictive session called an annual chart where you look forward at short chance. It's like, when should I open my business? Those kinds of questions. He said, we have a couple extra minutes. Any questions? And I was wanted to be a skeptic because I'd never heard any of this before. And I said, can you look at May 1st, 1977? And he goes, hold on, click, 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 click.
Wow.
There was a 45-degree period there where you would have been really accident prone. And I had not told him yet that that was the day I was hit by a car a month before my third birthday. And it's like uncanny. And I know how to read charts now, and I've looked at it and like, yeah, he's right. It was a really bad, it was an accident. Now, does that mean it might have meant I broke my wrist or stubbed my toe really bad, but it so happened I got hit by a car and it radically changed my life. And that's the kind of thing you see reliably.
Yeah,
The space shuttle,
he could not
he
guess
couldn't have
that.
known. The interesting similar chart was when I looked at Krista McAuliffe's on the day of the Space Shuttle Challenger explosion. Same kind of thing. Accidents, Kurt Cobain's suicide, same kinds of things. You
Wow.
see it again and again and again. You don't
Yeah.
ever not see something.
Yeah.
So that gets my attention.
Yeah. It's just, listen, if you're not curious about something like that, there's something wrong. It's so interesting to me. I'm a big history buff too. So that
Hmm.
added on to the history stuff, it's just super, super interesting for me.
Yeah, it's totally fascinating. JFK's assassination and Abe Lincoln's assassination had the exact same, it's called an inverse nodal return, which just happens like every 17 years. And it just
Oh my
happens to
God.
be the exact same time. Now,
Wow.
other people, that same pattern I've seen an enlightened teacher who woke up on that day. So
There you go.
it's a radical change indicator. Also, the 27 Club, because I think it's every 27 years. Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Amy Winehouse, and Kurt Cobain was one of them too. They all had that same configuration. So I interpret it to mean like something's got to change if you're going to keep going.
Yes. Yes. And use this information. It's at their fingertips. Use this
Yeah,
knowledge.
yeah, of
Wow. It's amazing. All right, my friend, we are going to close up the show. I would love for
course.
you, I'm going to push out your information on our show notes, but I would love for you to tell people how to get in touch with you. I would think that you might get some messages.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I spell my name Josef, as in Frank, because I have a personal thing about silent letters. So if you search for my name, Josef Shapiro, Shapiro, you'll find both of my podcasts very easily. My website is Clear and Open. The and is spelled out, clearandopen.com. You can also go to content.clearandopen.com. My podcast and my writing is there. I would love to have you read, watch, and or listen.
Yes. Oh, real quick. I don't want to hang up yet. You're having a class about
Oh yeah,
coming up, and we're sitting here talking, and I'm like, I'll
I
take
know.
you after
I
a couple
forgot
of
about it
minutes.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, September 3rd, I'm doing a course called From Personality to Development, which is going to be about structural perception and developmental astrology. Because what I discovered sort of by accident, as I was creating developmental astrology, I noticed it was helping me to think structurally better, but it was more importantly helping other people think structurally who couldn't do it at all. So then I go, oh, this is bigger than just astrology. This changes how the way you perceive reality. It gives you the ability to see inside the walls. So that's 12 consecutive weeks, 75-minute sessions beginning September 3rd. You can find all the info at clearandopen.com about
Yeah.
that.
I love it. And listen, if you're out there and you're interested in this, you don't have to worry about the astrology stuff. He's just using that as a method. This
Mhm.
business information is super important. The knowledge, the experience, the education you're going to get in this class, it'll be phenomenal.
Yeah, I am a business coach. I'm also a spiritual teacher. I'm also
Yeah.
the pioneer of developmental astrology and half a dozen other things. I'm a quadruple Gemini. I'm just a curious person. So
Yeah.
maybe one day I'll have a single title, but not right now.
No, I can't see that. Love it. All right, my friend. Thank you so much for coming on today. We're going to want you to come back, cover some specific topics. This has been
Love
so
to.
general, but such great information. I love this stuff. For all you listeners out there, thank you so much for listening in today, following us, hopefully for the last 8 years. If you're just joining us for the show, make sure you go ahead and subscribe, and you'll find us on any of the podcast platforms. And we will catch you next time on the Launchpad. You all take care.